today's topic, Gabe sent over a video from Mr. Beast. And if you don't know who Mr. Beast is, he's probably, I mean, arguably the most popular YouTuber ever. He had the Beast games. He puts out tons of content and does like crazy stuff where, random fact, they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, what is the longest you'd be willing to be away from home?" And I was like, dude, I don't think I could do 30 days or 45 days away from home. But they have some events that go on for a really long time. And one of the events happened to be a gentleman losing 100 pounds. So, Gabe, let's talk about it. You're the one who sent it over. And there is a lot to unpack. I totally agree with you. I think this was a really incredible video and super sad at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it is really good, and there's like a very unexpected piece to all this. So if anyone's like on the fence about I'm gonna watch it or not, you should definitely go watch it. Spoiler alert, just kind of like, to get in front of that. MDV, did you watch it? I'll kind of give like a synopsis, but there were just so many things that like popped out, things that we've talked about on the podcast before, things that I know have come up as like questions. And anyway, so the premise of the video was they had this gentleman, I think he was 350 pounds to start, 320 something. He was over 300 to start.
Yeah.
And the challenge was, and this is the interesting thing too about Mr. Beast videos, it's really funny. He has basically 3 videos that he does over and over and over, different versions of. He does like the least expensive to most expensive. Like he does all these videos of like least expensive boat to like most expensive boat. And he always does these videos of like, you can't leave a certain place for X amount of, but he does all different versions of that. And this version of it was this guy who was a friend of his who's over 300 pounds, had some weight to lose, wanted to lose that weight, was gonna be essentially, it's silly to say like locked in this house because it was like a mansion. It was beautiful, but
Dude,
he
it
was
had like a
supposed
whole
to
like
stay.
courtyard. It had like a whole track. I mean, dude, it was
Yeah.
it was like an athlete's dream house.
And that was the interesting thing. The interesting thing too, right? It was essentially built out to be the essential place where you would want to be if you were trying to optimize your health and lose weight. Like it had an endless pantry of like super healthy foods. It had an entire indoor gym. It had a basketball court. It had a track around the circumference, and it was like a super comfortable house. And the whole thing was, if he could stay there and lose 100 pounds in less than a year, he wins $250,000. And every month there were these additional challenges where they would challenge him on things that he obviously couldn't do when he first started the challenge. And if he improved them by a certain amount, he could add money to how much he would win at the end. But I thought, I mean, there were so many interesting things. And the really unfortunate part was he had this personal trainer. So a personal trainer was a part of it. And this personal trainer, Coach Wall, came in and spent every day with him. And they documented what I think it was like the first 2-3 months, Jay.
Yeah.
The guy was coming in every day. They built such a close relationship. He was like encouraging him. He was obviously coaching him. They were like, in this together. They had all these moments. They even had a moment that they shared where, and this is an interesting thing we can talk about too. The guy who was trying to lose weight had a setback. Like he was killing it, momentum. And then he had a point where he just like had zero motivation, like wasn't doing it, kind of like took a step back on this journey. And it was so interesting to me because one thing we talk about here is, a lot of people kind of like will say that they don't have enough time, that like cooking's an issue, that stuff is expensive, like all these reasons is why they kind of like, potentially step back or fall off, on the journey. And it was so interesting to see this guy who literally has access to everything. There's zero excuses for him.
And no distractions. I mean, I think
No
he saw his
distractions,
family.
nothing. He wasn't working anything. Like
I think
he
he saw
was
his
just,
family once. Is that what it was?
What was his
but he also
family
like
setup?
wasn't
What
he
was his
wasn't
family
isolated from
setup?
them either. He had access to the outside world. So it was interesting to see that even someone like that at some point like loses the motivation. And what was interesting was the reason that happened.
What was his family setup? Did he have kids? Did he have a wife?
No kids.
No kids,
No
but he had
kids.
a
Yeah.
wife.
He was married though.
He was
right?
He was
Or-
married.
Okay.
And so the interesting thing was the time where he had this setback was actually the 1-year anniversary of his father passing away. And it sent him in this funk. And I think that was an interesting, like, real life takeaway too of how emotional some of this stuff is and how, like how much energy and discipline you need to do these things and how empty you can get on those things when just like life hits and whether it's a tough, stressful time or whatever. So that was interesting. But anyway, and then I'm curious to get your thoughts, Jay. The big thing that happened that was super unexpected in the middle of the video was the personal trainer died. So they had to come in one morning and they had to tell him that, this guy, Coach Wall, who he had like developed a relationship like this. Yeah.
Dude, yeah.
How did the guy die?
They found him in his apartment.
Was it a suicide or they don't know? The cause of death not known? Oh, wow.
Cause of death not known, but like sudden and unexpected. And
was he a very healthy, fit individual?
100%. He was a trainer.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Trainer and there's so much to talk about there too, right? Like obviously you're just watching snippets from a YouTube video, but from everything that you watch in the video, he was like incredibly positive.
Yeah.
Super inspirational. Like was clearly doing this video with Mr. Beast, like clearly is doing well. I mean, from the outside looking in, doing as well as you can as a personal trainer, being picked to do this like very viral thing. Like there's so many things on the surface that you would say, wow, like this guy is doing well. And like, it's just like, you never know. But anyway, I thought the way Mr. Beast edited the video and told the story of what essentially it was incredibly tragic, I do think he did a really good job. Essentially the end of the video, and then again, I'll open it up to you, Jay, is the guy decides to continue. Like obviously they make it up to him and up to the family of the trainer if they even want to continue with this thing. The guy wants to do it. He wants to go finish losing the 100 pounds. He ends up doing it. His transformation is insane. They also have like all these tests along the way, the things that he can do, 4 months, 5 months into this, like his mile time and how much that goes down, his health markers and how much those improve, I think is such a crazy testament to what's actually possible if you were to do every single little thing that you should be doing to, transform your health. And at the end, I think it was a really nice, like the whole video was in honor of Coach Wall and the impact he had on Midge's life, which was a guy that was trying to lose weight. So anyway, it was an insane video. If people haven't watched it, I highly, highly recommend it. It's not like just a little gimmicky Mr. Beast video. It was a really inspirational, very heartfelt, even though it was a very tragic story. And I really enjoyed it. And there's just so many little moments we can dive into that I think are so telling and such good examples of things that we've talked about on this podcast. So anyway.
Yeah, the Coach Wall, I wrote this down as a note, as a story, not as a person, and what he did. I think it's like a story, meaning like, I don't know, and I hate to be that guy who speculates. It's very easy to speculate and wonder what happened. I would say that like when it comes to mental health, if it did have anything to do with that, it'd be shocking to me because he would have been like at the height of his career, right? Like, dude, you're on this viral moment. Like, and it just goes to show that there's so much more to life, it's so much more than what meets the eye. Cause this guy on the video, dude, super positive, very, motivational, really is helping this guy get to his weight loss goals. Right. And obviously he's on like a viral TV show and But again, I hate to speculate. I'm going to stop speculating because that's not fair to him. Right. It's just Coach Wall was a story in the sense of like, there are so many people out there who need a Coach Wall in their life, and you might be that guy for somebody else. Like the reason why I took this to heart is like, dude, this guy potentially completely changed. What was his name again? The gentleman lost
Midge. I don't know what his like real full name is, but that's what they called him in the video.
And I hope that Midge has continued on the path. But like, dude, Coach Wall was the catalyst that helped. And obviously the situation was great, but like, you could be a Coach Wall. Like you could really dramatically impact other people's lives. And I think that was really powerful to me. Like he represented more than just an individual. He represented like, dude, like hope, like, hey, if wherever you're at, there's a way that you could get in better shape. And the most inspiring thing that I thought in the video, and I thought it was just crazy, bro, was that mile run. What he started off at like 16 minutes, right?
17 minutes.
Yeah, dude, his mile run started off and okay, total time he was in the house, I want to say it was like 130 days, Gabe? It was like,
yeah, it was like 5 months, 5.5 months. He lost, that's another thing to talk about too, man. Like he lost 100 pounds in a very healthy way because he had doctors every step of the way, like making sure that it wasn't like some crazy crash diet. He was eating super, super healthy. He was eating enough to like fuel his workouts. But yes, he lost 100 pounds in 5 months.
What was his starting weight? Do we know?
300 and I want to say around the 320s.
So he had quite a bit of, obviously he was a bigger guy, right? And it's funny because when you see him in the beginning of the video, like, yeah, he looks big, but he doesn't look like 320 pounds big to me. he just looked big. So he must be tall or whatever. But nonetheless, what was really fascinating to me is that, like, dude, guys can get in such good shape so quickly. And it just requires that consistency. But it's crazy to go from a 17-minute mile, like, dude, to not even be able to, like, that's like a fast walk, right? To then be able to cut it down into it. I think he got 8:05 or something like that in his mile time a few months later. It just blows my mind. And then the hang, Gabe. I mean, do we talk about hanging strength and grip strength as a variable for health? And I'm glad that Mr. Beast used these tests, 'cause I know he's been on his own fitness journey, but I'm glad he used the mile run. I thought that was a good indicator. I'm also glad he did the hang. I mean, obviously from a video perspective, it's very like cool to watch because you know you're just hanging. But nonetheless, he went from, like, I want to say it was 6 seconds to 60 seconds in the span of months. Like, my major takeaway is that Coach Wall made a big impact, and that if you're a guy out there, if you know a guy out there who's off the path, dude, I'm telling you, you can get back on it and you can see dramatic results in a very short period of time.
I thought it was so interesting, the things that they chose and had him do to, like, okay, if you're doing everything you can to lose weight in a healthy way and get to a much healthier place, 100 pounds in as few days as possible, what are the things you put in place? And it was food quality, right? Like, he had access to a pantry, he was cooking, it was all like whole foods, like basically he had like this like mini supermarket in this like house. It was crazy. And he was like, one of the things Coach Wall helped him with is helped him learn how to cook, right? So it wasn't like, here's your meals every day and it's got like the ideal macros and food quality for you to lose weight. It was very much a like, you give a guy a fish, he eats for a day, you teach him how to fish, he can live forever. It was learning how to cook and make your own meals was a big kind of cornerstone of that. There was obviously a macro component that started at a certain number, and as he progressed with the weight loss, it went like lower and lower and lower. So there was food quality, there was food quantity, there was the workouts, but there was also a step goal. So it wasn't just, hey, you're going to train with the trainer once a week and that's it. It was, hey, we have to hit 12,000 steps per day because you also want to be active throughout the day. And then there was sleep, there was stress, there was all these other things. He was getting blood work done, something that we talk about all the time, to make sure that, like, okay, everything outside is looking good and changing, but what's going on under the hood? Are those things improving? So that was interesting too. It's like, okay, clearly a lot of thinking went into like, hey, how are we going to do this? And it's the same principles that we've talked about that you would like put in place. Now, I know obviously a lot of people listening might be like, okay, but I can't do all of those things perfectly, and there's a lot of other things going on. But I think that either way, like, there's a lesson to be learned there about like, those are the basics. And that's what you should try and prioritize as best you can. Obviously, you're not going to dedicate, your entire 24/7 to it because, they're covering expenses or there's this big, cash prize at the end. But like, the basics are the basics, clearly.
Dude, MVP, there was one event where they had $5,000 in each of these bags, and if he made a lap, so if he dropped any of the bags, he lost all the money. But as many bags as he can carry. So I think he ended up with 40 grand, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. But dude,
in ones.
Bro, could you imagine if that was like one of us? I'd be trying to stack that. Like, I'd put it around my neck. I would do anything I could to just like drag that thing along.
Oh man.
MD,
I think you're on mute. You're on mute.
If Mr. Beast is listening, I'm down to go live in a house for 200, 300 days. With Boots, let Boots can come along too, and we can see how jacked we can get. I want to watch this video. I think it's really sad and tragic that this coach died. And I think, it underscores, I'm not going to read into the circumstances. I was doing a little bit of a Redditing here, looking at some of the stuff that went up on Reddit about, his name was James Wall, right? James Wall. And, this guy, Coach Wall, was this tremendous inspiration for this individual in this video. And he probably gave him so much of his own knowledge and care and experience and, what a good coach does, right? A good coach creates that connection with an athlete, creates that trust, puts them on that path, helps them, motivates them when they need it, pulls back when they feel like they're going a little too hard. But also, if you're a coach out there and you're somebody who's struggling with stuff that maybe on the surface it doesn't look like you're struggling with anything, like if your body is dialed in and you're happy and you're smiling and you're walking around helping other people, a lot of times that means, or it seems like you have all your shit together and you're feeling good. But again, I'm not going to speculate, but if you're somebody who's like that and you got some stuff going on under the surface, under the hood, man, you got to go find help. You have to figure out, how do you talk to somebody? How do you call up your friends and say, hey, I'm struggling. Hey, I don't know what to do. I think that's one of the things that, more and more I hear about mental health struggles for men who don't know where to turn. And a lot of times these guys look like they have it all together, man. I mean, how many times have we heard about people in the special operations or military community or law enforcement community where it seems like they have everything together? They have they have a body that's built through hard work. They've got connections with people forged through really tough and trying times. Maybe even a family, maybe even kids, all these kinds of things. And then they're just not here the next day. And it's really, really sad and really tragic. And I hope that anybody who's listening here, that if you're struggling through these things, if you feel alone, find somebody to reach out to, find somebody to latch onto and get through it. In terms of the 100-pound weight loss, man, it's doable. I think one of the things that at least from your guys' explanation on this, is like, it seems like, yes, this guy had the perfect set of circumstances to lose this weight. Mansion, track, weight room, chef or whatever, pantry full of stuff. The circumstances were all in his favor. But that doesn't mean that if you're sitting at home and you're like, man, yeah, I got 100 pounds that I can lose, but I don't have that set of circumstances, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. What you have to just do is you have to start angling your life along those same principles. And maybe you're not able to take it from 0 to 1 million right away, but maybe you could make some small changes here in line with what this video talked about. Start changing the quality of your food a little bit. Start paying attention to the quantity of your food. Add in daily activity, man. If you're not walking, if you're somebody who's struggling with weight and you're not walking every single day, if you're not moving your body every single day, that is the absolute first thing that you should do. You should get off of the couch, get on your feet and start walking. Just start walking. You can walk for hours, man. And I think that activity adds up exponentially over time. So I'm stoked. I'll watch this video. I'm sorry that I didn't watch it before the podcast, but I think that the few takeaways that at least I had from this are like, dude, if you're struggling with mental health, reach out. You've got a circle, you got people, you can talk to whoever. And then if you don't have anybody like that, then what do you do? What do you guys, what's your advice to that? If somebody's like, man, I wish that I could talk to somebody, but I don't know who to talk to. Who do you go talk to?
Well, I think there's
obviously the hotlines.
There's hotlines, which I think for a lot of times could actually be easier than an in-person person.
Yeah. Friends, family, community, anybody. Yeah, friends, family, anybody who cares about you.
Yeah, and I think you got to let down the shield and just like be open to it. I think that's really important. I mean, that's why I've seen the men's club, right? I mean, dude, you'd be shocked at what we've experienced in the men's club at coffee, and I think that one layer of distance is actually good. So like if it's a really close friend of yours, maybe you'll feel judged or maybe you'll feel whatever. But if it's just like a group that you connect with through like-minded shared suffering, like fitness, I found that those conversations are actually a little bit even more powerful than you would with your close friends. So I would say the hotline, then obviously that. But I think at the end of the day, it's requiring someone who wants to, stop feeling the way they want to, they want to see improvement. And then they need to try different things to see what ends up working for them, right? Because different things are going to be different for each individual. That video, I mean, I enjoyed it. I hope everybody can go give it a shot, just because I think it gives a lot of focus on what we're doing as an organization, and how like what we're sharing is not like anything different than what these guys had in the perfect situation. You just got to be able to implement these things in your life. Like yesterday I was coaching at the gym and I was sharing with them, like, dude, I share with them the 50 grams of protein to kick off the morning, and just trying to just share like a little bit of, dude, try this and see what happens. And the feedback was really cool, just shining light on like, hey, let's try something for a month or two. And if you don't like it, dude, you still have another 30, 40, 50 years to live, and you could do whatever you want to do, right? But at least you're trying something and see how it impacts your life.
Before we move on from the mental health stuff, I think the flip side of it too that's super important is we can all minimize the probability of there being a guy out there that's like, dude, I have no one to reach out to, if you're proactively just checking in with the people around you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's something that I've tried to be a lot better at. But if everyone listening, like, reached out and like really genuinely reached out to, like, 3 or 4 guys that, they haven't connected with in a while, like, that could be a guy sitting there. It's like, I have no one to talk to, but next thing you know, like, I got a text coming in from MDB and he's like, hey dude, it's been a while. Like, how are you doing? Starts a conversation. And
Yeah.
like, that's all it takes to completely change the trajectory of someone going on,
For sure, dude.
a really, I don't know what you're trying to show on the screen.
Who's that?
Look at,
Texting who?
look at that. I got this message yesterday from my boy Justin, Sunnyvale PD. Let's go. He goes, "What's up, brother? Just doing a mental man check-in. Hope all is well with you and the family." And then he goes on to, we start having a conversation. But
Mental
dude,
man check-in. I like that.
dude, yesterday, 5 p.m. That's a great example of what you're talking about, like taking ownership on what you could do.
For sure.
I try and do this, but this is a perfect example. Like, this just happened to me yesterday.
We can all do a little bit better. And it reminds me, it's a sad story, but I think it like really, really brings the point home. If you guys haven't, I forget, it's like an essay or a short story, but the guy, so there's one person that has survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And there's
I
been,
don't know if it's one person.
I think when I read it, he was the sole person that tried to commit suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and actually survived. It's impossible at that height. And it actually, part of the article, if I remember correctly, like explains just how he landed in the like 1 in a millionth way that you could land, where, I mean, obviously he messed himself pretty bad. And then, not only survive the fall, but then not drown after, once your like back is broken and you're like basically completely, and he survived. And now he's a huge advocate, obviously, for mental health and suicide prevention and all those good things. But in the story, he tells this moment before he jumps where he's on the Golden Gate Bridge, he's thinking all these thoughts, and, it just feels so hopeless. And someone taps him on the shoulder. And the wish that he had in that moment was that it was finally someone asking if he's okay. And it ended up just being a tourist that was like, do you know the directions for this? And for him in that moment, that was the moment where he was like, no one actually cares. And he went and did the thing. And it just like, it really brought home for me now thinking about it too, just like, I think that a lot of people that maybe aren't in a great place, like, do desperately just want someone to reach out or kind of need that. But I remember that clearly, because in his story, that was what he cited. Like, he wanted nothing more than to that person that tapped him on the shoulder to have noticed that like clearly something was wrong and just be like, hey man,
Was it
like,
Kevin
you good?
Hines?
I don't remember that. Like, literally this just came to my mind now as we were talking about it. I remember reading, it was a very powerful story.
So
But,
it says here, just for Golden Gate Bridge is extremely rare, fatality rate of 98%. Kevin Hines is one of only 35 to 40 people known to survive, because I had heard of a kid
There you
who
go.
was walking with his classmates and
Wow.
got like dared
Walking.
to jump. Like,
But
like,
I
that's
think
totally
that-
different. Yeah,
I think the difference is like, this is the person that the only person that was like trying to,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
But nonetheless, what you're talking about. So just back to what you were saying, because I was looking it up because I was really curious. So he was there, and someone actually tapped him on the shoulder, but it was just like a, "Hey, where's Alcatraz?" or something like that. Versus,
Yeah.
Well, this is like It's a Wonderful Life, man. That's the entire premise of It's a Wonderful Life. Jimmy Stewart, who is struggling with his entire life. So It's a Wonderful Life is one of the most iconic American films ever made. In particular, if you're a holiday movie person who really likes Christmas movies, it's an iconic Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life, fantastic movie, American cinema to the max. What happens is Jimmy Stewart is on a bridge and he's considering taking his own life, and his guardian angel Clarence sees him. Jimmy Stewart jumps, Clarence gets sent down and jumps as the angel into the water and saves Jimmy Stewart and takes him on this journey. So when they get back to the surface, Clarence, the angel, tells Jimmy Stewart, or Jimmy Stewart says, I would have just don't want to be here, and my life would be better if I wasn't here. And what Clarence ends up doing for Jimmy Stewart is showing him that the path of his life if he wasn't there, showing him how all of the world around him, how his family would be different, how his wife would be different, his kids non-existent, how his like whole banking business that he helped his dad build, like that was all gone, and like Mr. Potter, the villain. It's a very, 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 very good movie if you haven't seen it. But it's this is the essential premise of it, is that the guardian angel is showing Jimmy Stewart how his life would be without him involved, or how life would be without him involved.
I'm glad that the gentleman who was able to use that as a positive though, right? And now is able to really go and champion. And the story is so compelling and powerful, right? Like, I mean, I could only imagine that he's impacted thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people by sharing his story, right? Because it's a real life example of like what you're, of like actually doing that. And then, hey, look, now and yes, that's powerful.
One of the things here, man, that like I'm also realizing about my own life and life that happens around me is like we talk about this in our coaching courses all the time. You never know what somebody else is going through. Like we talk about this in our coaching courses in terms of the coach interacting with the athlete, and if the athlete is having a hard time or they're giving you some big static back, they're giving you that like, ooh, I don't want to be here, I'm angry, or I'm upset, or like, hey, I'm pissed off. And from a coaching perspective, that can be tough to deal with somebody who's doing that to you in a class environment, or that's happening to you in a class environment. But you truly never know what somebody is going through. And, in walking around your everyday life, I'm not saying that you have to be like the happy-go-lucky guy all the time, and you have to be like, oh yeah, rah, rah. Like, I'm not like that. But having empathy for people, or at least being a good human being, or saying hello to somebody, or like saying excuse me, or saying thank you, or just kind of, living in the environment that you're in a positive way can also impact people extremely positively, right? Somebody might be going through all this stuff and you say, hey, how's your day going today? It could be something as simple as that, or saying like, hey, I really appreciate it. Thank you for holding the door for me, or whatever. I think that all that kind of stuff really, really matters a whole lot. And, I think going through your life, trying to be the best possible human being you can be, and be somebody who's there to influence your environment in a positive way is huge. I'm not saying that never be ready. I'm not saying never be violent if you have to be violent. I'm not saying never be dangerous if you have to be dangerous. Those things are important to be when you have to be them in a real circumstance. For sure. For sure. I'm not saying that if somebody's trying to threaten you or your family that you have to like kill them with kindness and shake their hand. Like, no. At some point there's a line at which you have to act, and you have to be ready to get the fuck out, or you have to be ready to do the thing that you have to do. But in most circumstances, I think that you can approach things in a pretty positive and kind of a pretty positive way.
Yeah, you can meet some really cool people too. Like, dude, last night I was at Caden's first football experience. And I met this guy, man. He has been teaching at a school where I grew up for 25 years. And I had the most fascinating conversation with him over, dude, he's been teaching high school at a school that's known for some violence and some like gang affiliation and whatnot for 25 years. And I had a great conversation with this guy, and you wouldn't have it if you didn't, kind of take a step back from your phone for a minute. And that's something I'm working on, and just like get your head up and just have a conversation with this guy. But that was a cool experience.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to look up and find, but as you were talking to MDV, what it reminded me, do you guys remember, I don't know if it was a Super Bowl commercial. I have a feeling it was a Super Bowl commercial. But do you remember that commercial that like went from like little event to little event of like kindness goes viral?
Yeah,
it was like someone doing like a really nice thing, and then that inspires them to do like another nice thing for someone, and it just kind of goes on. It was probably like a Coca-Cola commercial or something, completely off the rails. But that's so true, man. It's so true.
Yeah, the whole like you could pay for someone, like I try and do that. I could probably do it more. This is a good reminder for me. Sometimes like trying to take care of like the next person's drink or stuff like that. There's like little stuff you could do that I think more of us need to be aware of, including myself. But I think nonetheless, it's like I think something that I'm trying to be more aware of. I'm much more aware of this when I'm with the kids and the family for sure. But when I'm not, I'm less aware of it, which is getting my head out of my phone. And when I'm with the family, it's not really an issue because it's like a constant reminder, like, what are you doing? But when I'm not with the family, it's very easy. I mean, shit, dude, I've even seen myself walking across the street and it's just like, come on, man. Like, what am I doing? Like, get your head out of your phone. You're walking across the street. Like, yeah, you might have a green light, but still, dude, like, that's a crappy way to go because of that, and that's something that I'm trying to be more mindful of because you also never know what type of conversations you could have with people and, open your mind and learn something new.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And yesterday's football was a good example for that. By the way, dude.
Is Caden in youth football now?
Bro. It's the best.
Is it touch football, flag football? Is it full contact? What kind of football is it?
I still think he's on the baseball train. And that's fine. I know your Mets haven't been performing as well. I did let him know.
Did you talk to Caden?
I did. And
what did he say?
You're not going to like what he said. So
no, that's good. What did he say?
I said, Gabe, dude, Gabe and MDV, they need you to like kind of bring the juju back for the Mets. He's like, why? And I was like, because they're losing. He's like, that's fine. I'm a Giants fan. I was like, oh.
Perfect. That's all we needed. The juju is set back in motion. We don't need any compliments from Caden. Screwed us over last time. For anyone that needs context, Jason out of nowhere, like never really talks baseball, never talks Mets, sends me and MDV a message that Caden wants to, Caden, Jason's son, obviously, congratulate us on how well the Mets are doing this season. Just out of nowhere. Very nice sentiment. Really appreciate it. Literally, since that message has been sent, the Mets have spiraled out of control and have lost 9 of their 10 last games and look absolutely terrible.
Oh man!
So I'm convinced. We need
to bring Grimace back.
Dude, I'm convinced.
Grimace more now at than any other moment.
I messaged Jason this morning. I was like, dude, you got to get Caden to like light a candle or something for us, man. This is bad.
So don't worry. We'll see if it rights the wrong. But
oh my God.
Yeah, but MDV. No. So seriously. So Caden's been doing flag football, but this was the first time doing tackle football.
Oh.
And man, I gotta tell you guys. I gotta tell you. One day, I hope that I don't know how things are going to evolve and what's going to end up happening. But this was a very, very cool experience for me. It's a 4-day tackle football camp, and we're just planting the seed. But watching the boys out there, it's so different compared to the energy of a baseball and energy of a football. It's night and day. And actually, I think both of them are really complementary to each other. Because in this particular case, we were at Bellarmine High School, which is like a prep school here, and they had the baseball team and the football team both kind of like out there at the same time. And you could watch the energy of the football team. You could watch the energy of the high school players who were helping to coach these younger athletes. And just the way, like, for example, in baseball, I've never seen them do a break in between stations. They only break in the end of practice, right? So they'll say, hey, go team, whatever, right? At the end of the practice. In football, they're going from station to station. In between every station, they broke. They huddled up, they broke. And it was much more of a different type of I guess not aggressive, but just more like speed, energy, like let's go. Versus baseball, it's like just different. It was great.
The game of football necessitates that as well.
Exactly.
You huddle between every play.
Right.
So you have to huddle with your team. You have to congregate. You have to get the play from the coach. You have to get the coach to the quarterback or whoever's calling the plays to the rest of the team, communicates that in the huddle. They break, they go out, they run the play, they come back, right? So it's I bet that's a very not only kind of camaraderie-based type of exercise, but it's also very tactical for that game, right? You have to be able to do something short and quick and then come back in and change and go right back out. It's very, very interesting. There's a big difference between, obviously, football and baseball. Completely different.
But I will say the energy was different, but the spirit was the same, if that makes sense. So, I was talking to a guy, and he's like, yeah, dude, I took my son to this other thing, and the coaches were swearing at the kids, telling them they're garbage, just really trying to drag them down.
Oh, wow.
And this camp seems like they're trying to build them up so it's just a really good example of how, and we've talked about this a lot on the show, that different coaches in different systems have different energies. You got to find the right one. I think for this camp, fingers crossed, I think we found the right energy for this time. So it's good.
Dude, I would have very little tolerance for anybody coaching youth sports talking to kids in that way. That would
Yeah.
be a complete non-starter for me, man. Below the age of like 17 or 18. But once you get to 17, 18, 19, 20, once you're into collegiate type of sports or you're into D1 sports, I do think that there is room for more criticism of play or more kind of like direct communication with these players. Essentially, once they get to the point where they're men who are out there playing the game at an extremely high level, I would say that yeah, I would be more okay with some of the stuff. But then there's also this line that I
It's
think that
unnecessary.
there's a line that sometimes you just shouldn't cross. I had a conversation with somebody the other day about this where it was just like there's certain things, and Gabe,
Gabe,
Gabe is
left
gone.
us. He's
Gabe's
like,
not in for this conversation anymore.
he's
He's
like,
out.
dude, I'm out for the whole football conversation. I'm coming back.
But there's also this like line of decency that like I think exists across humanity where you kind of understand like, yeah, I can say something like this and still get my point across. And then there's the other thing on the other side of the line where if like you're talking to someone and you're calling them a piece of shit and you're telling them they're worthless and all this kind of stuff, and you are trying to motivate them like that, I just don't think that there's any value
There isn't.
in that
But it
kind of
comes
thing.
back to the way that they were kind of like coached up and thinking that that's the way, right? But I think what you're seeing is you're seeing a shift that like, dude, you don't have to be that way. You could get boys. I watched it firsthand yesterday. You're getting boys to move with attention, to move with purpose, to get the job done, and speaking to them in a way that like they're relating to, So that was my. I totally agree with you. I think that youth sports, there was probably a while that I think that this old school kind of like hard nose, but belittling hard nose was popular. And then this group of people were raised in that way. So then they just continued it. Now I think you're seeing a shift, right? Where you're still going to do hard nose. Like, dude, these guys were not messing around. It's like, dude, come here, be on the ball, like water. Like it was fast, but it wasn't condescending. It wasn't,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It was,
I'm not saying that you can't be demanding.
it was demand. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
youth
Yeah.
sports, I do think that one of the major benefits of sports is the discipline and the camaraderie, the team effort, the taking feedback, the understanding that you are a part of a team. Like it's not just an individual effort, that your actions on the field, off the field impact both you and the team. And dude, I like when coaches hold a hard line on certain things. I really do. I just don't think that there's any room for calling like a little kid a piece of shit. Like I
think
mean,
most people would
call
agree
me
with you.
crazy,
No,
but I think that that's like way beyond. And then also on like the parent side of the equation, I think like, yeah, you could get like frustrated at like a call that doesn't go your kid's way. But then there's also that line where like, if you're going to start yelling at the referee or the umpire who might happen to be just like a kid who's volunteering at the game, it's like a wild behavior. I think people lose emotional control so quickly in these situations where it's like a competitive atmosphere or their kids are involved or whatever. And I'm not saying that like, again, I'm not saying
It's
that
hard.
yeah,
You gotta check.
have
You gotta
to
check yourself.
You have to
Well,
check
dude,
yourself.
let me give you a quick analogy. So this guy, 25 years, teaching at Piedmont Hills High School, which is right by where I grew up, and at the location there is quite a bit, I'd say, of there's some people that probably grow up in a rougher way, right? Not the roughest, but rougher. And dude, he says that there's a fight on campus like almost every day, and they've been told that as teachers they can't like
Intervene.
interact, right? So dude, check this out. This is really similar to what we've seen with like kind of like the whole like removing police support. I think this is going to be a vicious cycle that I hope doesn't end up really bad, because he's saying that teachers are retiring 4 to 5 years earlier than we normally would because they can't put up with it, where they're having fights on a regular basis, but they can't intervene. And all of the police that were like the safety people at the school have all been taken away. And so now you have no safety support. The teachers can't intervene. So like it just becomes this environment where like, where's the road going to go, man?
Dude, it
Like,
become Lord of the Flies, man. That's what it becomes. It becomes Lord of the Flies. Where
Man,
there's no rules. The kids know that they have the license to do really whatever they want to do. No consequences, no real consequences for the actions. That's a tough place to be. And I don't look down on anybody who's retiring and saying, man, I don't want to put up with this anymore.
right. Dude, for sure. And I mean, because I'm talking to this guy and he's like, dude, I would not, he said to me, he goes, I would not send my kid there. It's like, well, that's terrible. I mean, you work there and you wouldn't want to send your kid there. It's like, damn, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that there's going to be a pendulum swing back there as well, because there needs to be more discipline associated, because otherwise, if no one ever gets, you know, in trouble for, you know, one kid, he was saying, brought brass knuckles. He was telling me a story. These 4 kids jumped or like got in a fight with a wrestler. The wrestler ended up taking him down, and the wrestler was like doing well, right? Of course, he's a wrestler, right? One of the kids had brass knuckles, punched him in the face. It's not funny, but
It's not
has
funny.
brass knuckles. It's not funny at all. Has brass knuckles. The kid actually ends up getting in trouble in this particular case. Comes back to school 4 days later, right? It's like,
Yeah, I mean that's a weapon, man.
Yeah.
Using a weapon in a. And I also like, I also don't think like we can completely eradicate physical conflict from people interacting at that age. You know, fist fighting. And
Yeah, there's
stuff
gonna
like
be some of that stuff.
scraps and stuff like that.
well, you know what's popular now too, dude, is ghost guns and I guess ghost machetes. I had never even heard of this.
What
Have
is
you ever heard
this
of a
stuff?
ghost machete?
No. What's a
Dude,
ghost
so there-
machete?
You know what ghost guns are like? They're 3D printed guns, or well, ghost guns are like these. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say ghost guns. 3D printed guns. Have you heard of these? Like they're using like so-
Plastic to create a weapon.
yeah. Now they're using that to create machetes. Like, dude, it's fucking mind-boggling.
Pretty crazy.
Hey, welcome back, Gabe.
Yeah.
Dude.
Where'd you go, Gabe?
Dude,
get a
who
coffee
knows?
break or what?
My internet crapped out. Dude, I mean, you know, I've kind of like alluded to this in the past, but I never try and like put stuff out there when we're so separate from having to make the decision. But it's just like all of this stuff that you guys are talking about too. Like, I don't see how homeschool is like not the way to go these days, man. I don't, dude. I feel more and more strongly about just like, dude, schools they're out of control in so many ways. In
Yeah, I
so
mean, this
many
was
ways.
one. Just to be fair, this was one example talking to a guy who's been there for 25 years. But yeah, I hear what
Sure,
you're saying.
but like
There's pros and cons to everything.
Of course.
of course, and like
You
it's
know,
a very,
homeschooling
very
is a very
individual
difficult environment, too.
decision for people, of course. But man, it's just like, to me, it just seems like such a, for us where we live, the values of our family, the opportunities that we have to do something like that, like for all of those reasons, again, for us and our family, like, dude, it just makes so much sense. The other thing that like really, really resonated with me the other day, not so much on like the violence and bullying, kind of like that stuff that's going on, but also just from like what we actually like learn in school perspective. And I was thinking about it too, like for me, especially early on, it's like now with the access of information that you have, like, I just like, what of the stuff that like you are taught in school do you even need aside from like learning how to read, communicate, and like be resourceful? And that's it. Like just so much of the stuff, man. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, but that was kind of the
School is
initial
like a
thought.
baseline
coming in.
education, man. It teaches you in a lot of ways how to be a human being who interacts in a community. Like that is the main value of school in a lot of ways, right? Like
Or to learn how to deal with people that you maybe don't align with. Like, oh, Gabe, I'll give you an example just real quick. This violent stuff that I was talking about at the school, obviously that sucks. But these kids also need to learn how to overcome conflict, right? They need to learn how to put, now these are extreme cases that I'm talking about. But like with Caden, dude, he'll be at school, and I think it's so important to have that social interaction because to MDV's point, like you're going to have people around you for the rest of your life. And so it's like, how do you homeschool, but also get the social interaction to learn? Like in Caden's example, there's kids in his class he might not get along with. He needs to learn that in life, you're not always going to get along with everybody. How are you going to overcome that? And then secondly, which I think is even more important that I'm learning with Caden, is like, dude, you might have someone that is even your superior that you might not necessarily like think is very credible or whatever. But how do you still have that like line of respect? Because, and again, there's all a nuance here, but like, dude, you might end up at a job where you might not love your boss, but how do you still perform and get to proceed? So I do think school teaches a lot in those areas, but although I also see the homeschooling idea in terms of efficiency. I think
There's
it
just
can be very
there's
efficient.
there's a better way to get access to all that. And I think the biggest
Sure.
thing that I've learned, and also again, like we're very blessed in where we live and the fact that like here, like homeschool is incredibly popular and it's incredibly common. And
lot
there's
of
like
kids.
there's gymnastics homeschool programs, there's BJJ homeschool programs, like there's literally these like lot of establishments that like it's all homeschool kids that go. And what I love about it is you're not with just kids of your own age, because you go out in the real world, you're not with just peers of literally your own age. Like you have to deal with kids that are a lot older, you deal with kids that are a lot younger. And I think that kids benefit greatly from this whole aspect of like learning how to go out and interact with the community. Your community is not going to be just everyone that's like your age, and in some places like just your gender, like you're just with girls that are in, you know, this grade, or just with boys that are in this grade.
I
Obviously
don't
there's
think that that's
benefits
the
to
case
that,
with
but
school though
in
either, Gabe. Like you interact with a lot of people in a scholastic
sure, but you're
environment
spending
of
the
different
bulk of your
ages.
time with a lot of your like exact peers, and then you go out in the real world and that's just not what it is. And again, like
But
all of
then,
this
oh,
stuff.
so hold on. So the homeschooling counter argument to that is then you spend all of your time with the exact people who think mostly the same way that you think, and then
What do you mean?
with homeschooling. Homeschooling.
Well, you can make the same argument with traditional, with the other way too, right? Couldn't you?
I mean, the thing is
I would think the disadvantage to homeschooling is the fact that like now you are narrowing this person's universe to a very specific set of. Well, tell me why I'm wrong, Gabe, because you're shaking your head.
Well, yeah, I 100% disagree, because I think that the benefit of homeschooling is that you get to decide how important it is to go out and have an open-minded. Like for example, I love Matt Boudreau and everything they put out with Acton Academy and how they go out and do their education, and it's exactly how we would approach how we want to homeschool.
Yeah, he's
and like a
legit.
lot of that is like I love the fact that like the Socratic method is a big part of how they teach. I would want Shay forever to like on any topic that we feel good about, you need to tell me your argument for it and you need to tell me your argument against it. And I want that with the homeschool groups that we collaborate with the families that we end up, having a community. Because like the other, I think, big misconception out there is that when you homeschool alone. Like all that is like
But a lot
you
of
and
people
your
do
kids
homeschool
all
alone.
the time.
Yeah, a lot of
I
that.
don't
A lot of that
necessarily.
was. It's gotten much more popular now. MDV, like even in our area, there is like I would
I
call it like a
understand.
hybrid approach.
So listen,
where
one of the things that I just have a pet peeve about is that there's not just one way to do things.
Sure.
I understand the positives and negatives on both sides of the equation here. I understand that there's both. There's great schools that you can send your children to. There's great public schools you can send your children to. You have the one of the things that's beautiful about the country that we live in is that you have the freedom of choice to put your children into this thing over here, this thing over here. And the thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes when we talk about whether it's nutrition or schooling or what is that we get into these things where it's like this one way, it's like it's only this is the best thing that we can do. And I just don't agree with that. I think that there's positives and negatives on both sides of the equation here. I understand that there's positives to homeschooling your kids and you have a fantastic way that you could do that. There's also positives to sending your kids to public school or private school or whatever. And I just think that there's multiple ways to do things to get to an end state where you have fulfillment and peace and calm or whatever. And it's not just like this is the only way to do things. So when we have these discussions, like that's at least the perspective that I want to take into some of this stuff, that when we talk about this, there's like it's not just one way or the highway. That's for me where I want to try to get to in talking about this, because I want to learn why you think that homeschooling is such a great option, because I do think that there's positives to it, but there's also negatives and downsides to it. I don't think it's just a positive direction for everybody.
For sure, for sure. And if whatever I said came off that way, like completely not how I feel. I feel like homeschool is an incredible option for us, based on where we live, based on our values, based on how we want to educate our kids, also based off the fact that like we hope and are going to have a big family and we want to keep them like around and around their siblings. I personally think that that's super important. But again,
But do you recognize that there could be downsides to it?
100%.
Gabe and I have talked
I mean,
a lot.
1,000,000%.
MDV, just kind of just for clarity's sake, like Gabe and I have talked about this a lot on the podcast, him and I, because I mean, dude, we're on completely two different. I actually think Gabe and I in this particular subject agree on a lot of things, but my children have gone private Catholic route, right? And he's looking at homeschooling. But we've had a lot of conversations about this because I see a lot of pitfalls in the traditional system. I also see a lot of some benefits.
For sure.
And I think that, so anyways, back to what you're saying, I do think that we're trying to approach it from the two angles because frankly, we represent the two of them, right? Like, because I know he wants to go that route and we've chosen a different route, for a variety of reasons.
One of the things that I have a hard time with, even talking to people about life or politics or nutrition or whatever comes up, is the fact when you have a conversation with a lot of people these days, like discourse is just dead. It's just dead. There's like no two-way sharing of information without the other person just thinking they're completely right. And this is
you could thank the algorithm for that.
Well, whatever we can thank for that, the way that American society has angled itself, the way that we have gotten so like insulated in our own beliefs about things, I don't know. But like in terms of talking about things that obviously have two sides to them, like I just think that for a healthy society and for healthy conversation, yes, we can talk about, hey, this works for me and this is why it works for me, but then recognizing the fact that there's also other things outside of what we believe is the thing that works so well for us, that there's an opportunity for other people to do other stuff that works well for them. And that's how I am trying to approach a lot of the conversations in my life, especially about the things that we do with fitness and nutrition. I think that there's a way to do things that works really well for me, but if doing something differently works well for you, whether that's weighing and measuring your food or working out with a very, very strict program or using whatever XYZ to get there, that's fine. I have no qualms with that whatsoever. I think that there's different ways to get to beautiful end states.
At least in these podcasts, though, I don't think anyone is saying differently. I always say that like the things that I say that work great for me. If you're like perfectly happy with what you do, like please keep doing it. If you love like, hey, food quality and that's what I do, or like I can't wait to put my kids in school, like by all means, like that, all that makes perfect sense. And these are very, very individual decisions that I have no business in having an opinion on how anyone does their stuff.
Sure.
Having said that, I do think that there are just some misconceptions with homeschooling that I had in the beginning too. Like if you would have asked me when we first had kids, if that was something that we were entertaining, I would have probably told you no, because homeschool, like you don't get the socialization aspect of it. Like, like they're not going to go out there and like, how do I know all the things that they need to know? Like, are they going to be prepared for college? Like I would have said all of those things. And I've just, in deep diving in those things, I think that a lot of that stuff is, especially given how the education has kind of evolved. And it'd be great to have Matt Boudreau back on the podcast because I have so many more questions that I would ask him because he was our first guest ever since we turned into Jason Khalipa Podcast. There's so many things that I've learned that are just so different than what I first expected. And I think that now, especially seeing the differences between Shay and Charlie has been very eye-opening too, because I think that one of the biggest cons to the traditional schooling system is that like boys learn so differently than girls. They're so different. They're different in terms of like how they learn, their energy levels, what they need, how much physical activity they need, when they're ready to learn. Like all of those things are so different. And the fact that we're like putting both of them into the same like track per se from day one just seems a little misplaced. I love the idea, for example, of holding boys back a year. I think that that's a great like interim step. Yeah, redshirting boys, like giving them an extra year before they start school, I think is a great idea.
From a sports perspective, that's a good
yeah,
whether it's from a sports perspective or just a development perspective.
Oh, bro. I mean, that hack is happening all around us. I mean, we were just talking about the Gilroy, we were talking about the wrestling. A lot of those guys are doing another year. I wish we had done it earlier. That's what I wish we had done. I wish that we hadn't have put in the system until like I wish we had waited a year to go into school instead of just getting Caden in as quickly as possible, because then he would have been older for his grade instead of younger. But now it's too late, man. I don't want to hold him back. That's not something we're interested in doing.
Either way, I would just boil this down to, I don't think there's any problem with championing what you believe is a good option for you.
I don't think so either.
While being very open to the fact that like that's not going to be a good option for everyone else, and that's perfectly fine. Doesn't mean that I can't feel very strongly that it is the right option for me, and I'll share that and all the reasons why I think so, because it might apply for some people, it also might not, and that's perfectly fine. and I have no business in like telling you what anyone should do, but I'll definitely share the things that like I feel strongly about because, you know, it might open some people's eyes to some things that maybe they weren't thinking about in the past. That's all.
Well, speaking of which, are you still doing the sugar diet, MDV?
I have been doing my own version of eating that. So coming back to the sugar diet, I tried it because I thought it was interesting. I like to try things and see whether or not they work. And I try not to just write things off right away because I don't think that they're valid or whatever. I tried it. It did work for me. It also was something that I don't think is a long-term solution in terms of like what I think is a healthy eating pattern for me. But I have manipulated the diet in a way that I think works for me. So I eat some protein in the morning with fruit. Through the middle of the day, I don't really eat a lot of food. I eat like some fruit here or there, have some honey. And then at night, I have a normal meal. And it works really well for me. So that's kind of the way that I'm approaching it right now.
Dude, so I'm still on that protein train in the morning, and it's been really helpful for me. Yesterday I got off a little bit because I was coaching really early, and I don't know, maybe it was like a subconscious thing, maybe it was like just like whatever, but I felt like, oh man, I'm a little off because I didn't get in my 50 grams of protein. So that's something I learned was like, you can't be so rigid because life's going to happen, right? So if I don't get in 50 grams of protein by 9 a.m., I'll be okay, right? I could get it by 11. It'll be fine. But yesterday was a good example of that. So I've still been doing that, and that's been working for me. So feels good.
On the note of like experimenting with stuff and trying new things, one thing that
Enclomiphene? Are you an enclomiphene, or what do you?
No,
what do
no,
you,
no, no.
You doing that TRT
No.
yet, or what?
No, I'm not doing any
PRP?
extracurriculars. No. I've been very open about, I think the BPC 157, the more I think about it now, the more I think it absolutely helped me get over this plantar fasciitis. I was injecting it straight into my foot, which sucked. I think I was like rushing to get better just so that I wasn't injecting this stupid needle on the bottom of my foot every morning. I think it helped. Again, it's impossible to say because I also like brought down my running mileage significantly. I was resting it, but based on the research that I did, it sounds like it got better a lot quicker than with most people. And I was doing BPC 157. So anyway, for whatever that's worth, I started doing, so I was talking to Dennis about this because I've been a geek about this for a long time and just haven't done it. But like grip strength is supposed to be like one of the best indicators of central nervous system recovery. And as I ramp up training, and just because I've been like kind of had these nagging injuries here and there, and I think, I don't know, I think that a part of it is like I end up doing a little bit more than I should, pushing a little harder than I should. I'm not good about, you know, taking my foot off the gas when I think my body's asking me to. So what I did, and I did a little bit of research on like how to set up this protocol, and I'll give you guys feedback as I get more into it, is I bought a thing that measures your grip strength. And 3 mornings in a row, so first thing in the morning, I tested what that number was to establish a baseline. And essentially the theory based on the research is if you wake up in the morning and you do your test, if you're within 95 to 100% of your baseline, it's like green light. Central nervous system isn't taxed. You're good to train as you were. If you're at 90 to 94%, it's like yellow light. You probably want to like bear down a little bit. Anything below 90% is a pretty big red flag that you're not ready to train as much and that you should either take a rest day or just take completely off. And this is backed by like a lot of like very like well-established science. So I'm curious. I'm keeping track of it like every single day. I have like a little spreadsheet that like I put the number in and it's like green, yellow, or red based on the number.
Have you been red?
I literally just established my baseline and did 1 day with it. I just got it on Saturday. So
I'd be really curious to see if you even ever get in the red, right? Like, I wonder how accurate that is. Like, if you like really smash yourself, right?
Dude, here's the interesting thing is I've already noticed not huge deviations, but it's really interesting. Like, first thing in the morning, I feel pretty much the same, but there was one morning where I did feel like I don't know if you guys have ever, like, you know, when you like literally feel like you can't squeeze your fist as hard, like you feel that weird kind of exhaustion.
Just recently.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there was one morning where I was like, wow, like this thing just doesn't feel as strong, because I had the same thought too, Jason, when I first bought it, because I was playing around with it and I was like, I don't know if this is ever going to feel different, you know?
Right.
But it did, but it's been too little time to tell, but this is essentially
How
my
much
like,
how much was it?
$40.
All right, I might jump on that train with you because I'm particularly interested. I am like
I have one of those 150-pound grip trainers. I think I mentioned this on the podcast at one point
Yeah.
that I just keep in my truck now. So every time I turn on my truck, I'll
That's
squeeze
legit.
it. I'll squeeze it 10 times in each hand, and then. But the other day, I got in my truck at night, and I was just like, I just put it in my hand. I couldn't squeeze it at all. I couldn't move it at all, and it was like most of the times I'm closing it pretty easily, but I couldn't for the life of me in either hand, and I was so wrecked.
Oh.
And it's mostly just because I've been adding a lot of swimming in. I've been swimming so much. Like almost every day I'm in the water for like 30 minutes now. And just the full body exhaustion that comes from swimming is outrageous. Outrageous. I've been taking time off of like the bike. I haven't been on the bike as much. I've been riding like my pedal bike. But swimming,
Are you doing all ocean MDB?
yeah, all
Nice.
ocean, all ocean, and it's not active swimming the whole time. Like I have my fins on, I'm pretty deep water. I'm swimming hard for a little bit and then chilling or treading water, swimming hard for a little bit, chilling, treading water. But dude, the exhaustion that you get from swimming is next level.
It's awesome.
Dude, underwater, having to go underwater where you're completely deprived of oxygen, where you cannot breathe, and then coming up, and then you see another wave coming, or if like you have to take another stroke and then go back under. Woof, dude. Kudos to you, Gabe, for doing that because it's just, I don't know if I could have hung with those people swimming in pools for so long, man. It's just the next level.
Dude, so it looks like the hand
Love
grip.
it.
It looks like you can get some on Amazon for $19.99. So
$19.99.
I will have to go pick one of those up because I am very curious. All right, gentlemen. Well, hey, started off talking about Mr. Beast and evolved from there. I hope everybody listening has a kick-ass day, kick-ass week. Appreciate you guys. Make sure.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. I mean, Gabe's wearing it. I got a different
Gotta
version
get the
on.
shirt. Gotta get
Gabe's
the
rocking
shirt.
the train early, train hard shirt. That is the slogan. That is the mindset. Make sure to check it out in the podcast show notes. You have links to our podcast, or excuse me, to our app. Best training programs on the planet, best community you could ever ask for. And so if you want to get back on the path, we got you covered. Check out the podcast show notes. And then obviously the merch. We have a badass sweatshirt, last hoodie you ever need to wear. I was rocking that for the men's club a couple of days ago. And then obviously a train early, train hard shirt. Super comfortable. Hope everybody has a great day and see you again next time.